Welcome to the first episode of the Balls Deep podcast here with Fantasy Six Pack. I'm your host, Bert, aka Finky Town. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you guys here today. Introducing my co-host here. You may know him from the Fantasy Baseball Dynasty Rankings of Fantasy Six Pack. We got my man Dave Eddy. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Bert. Excited to get balls deep with you.
I'm excited to get balls deep. We're happy to bring you here to a new daily fantasy sports podcast, or also known as DFS. And we're going to kind of hit things from an everyday angle. You know, myself and Dave, we connected through Fantasy Six Pack with our love for fantasy sports. We're just average guys without the algorithm that love playing daily fantasy, and we both think we've got some good stuff to offer. We both think we've been pretty successful over the years, so we're excited to come together here. Let's dive in to the Thursday Night Showdown. I want to take a quick look at that. It is a great new format for the single game contest on all the major fantasy sites, and the concept involves a team captain. So since the contest only involves two teams, not a lot of people to choose from. So they offer the team captain role to give you 1.5 times the amount of points the player would earn, as well as him costing 1.5 times the salary. Dave, are you familiar with this concept? Have you been able to dabble in the showdown captain mode before?
Absolutely.
Awesome. What are your experiences with it so far? Do you enjoy it? Do you see it kind of taking a new jump to the next year? Because it really only started last year.
Yeah, I still have mixed feelings on it. So, I mean, I prefer the classic, kind of lineup. But I'm also kind of a creature of habit, So I've definitely done, the captain showdown, whatever you want to call it. And I'm still trying to perfect the science on exactly what I like to do. So, to me, each game is a little bit different. If there's a guy, that's expensive who then becomes more expensive. But I'm just absolutely positive that he's going to have a monster game. Then, I will start off by, jumping in on him and working on filling out the rest of my roster. If I don't have a guy that I just absolutely am in love with, then what I've been doing is kind of trying to find the best value I can. So, working my way down the price list and getting a cheaper option that I think is going to provide me a good value. It's kind of more of a high risk, high reward kind of thing. And that's where I've actually hit my bigger winnings is, hitting on a guy, in the bottom half of, the pool than, taking a guy at the top. But I wouldn't say that that's my preferred strategy yet, because I'm still learning exactly what I like to do.
Love it. Well, tonight, football season begins. We've got the Packers and we've got the Bears. Who are you looking at for your captain slot tonight?
So I'm actually going to go with okay. So this could change literally from the time that this podcast ends. But as of this exact second, I do have Tariq Cohen is my captain.
Very nice. You feeling a big game from the little guy?
Kind of. So when I originally did this, that's the guy that I went for. David Montgomery is actually only $300 cheaper. And so I honestly think I will probably end up swapping it out for David Montgomery. But either way, moral of the story is Bears running back for either, 12-6 or 12-3.
I like it. That's the fun thing about captain mode. These two running backs who should both have a pretty good workload in that offense, they could be the difference. Whoever's the one that gets into the end zone, with them being your captain slot, it's a 9-pointer as opposed to a 6-pointer, and that could really get you over the hump and into the money. Personally, on my end, my captain for tonight's game is Allen Robinson. I think he's had a full year to recover, really get used to his new quarterback. His captain price would be $12,900, and I think that they're going to have to throw the ball against the Packers. I think that they're somewhat weak in the secondary. I think Trubisky is going to be going to his number one wide receiver. Another thing that I look at when it comes to the captain mode is I always try and pick a captain who I think will be less than 20% owned. And now the cool thing about these contests is it shows the ownership percentage of the entire contest, and it shows the ownership of the players on what their captain ownership is. So you could be looking at Allen Robinson per se and see he's owned by probably 50% of the field, which is what I'm estimating. But I think his captainship will be in the 15 to 20% range, as I think people will lean towards the quarterbacks. And I think people will lean towards somebody like an Aaron Jones maybe against the Bears' run defense to try and keep him pound the rock there, or someone like Aaron Rodgers. I think Trubisky's going to have to throw the ball, and he's someone I have on my roster as well, because if I'm going to have A-Rob, I'm going to have Mitchell Trubisky on my team as well. Who are some of the guys that you're going to fill out the rest of your lineup with your captain Tariq? How are you going to build your lineup to maximize, hey, if Tariq Cohen goes off, who's going to do well the rest of that game to facilitate that?
Well, so normally I do exactly what you said. If you're going to win a tournament, you pretty much have to stack. So, even though I know Tariq Cohen is a running back, obviously the reason, at least initially, why I picked him over David Montgomery is because I think they're going to throw the ball more than they're going to run the ball. We will see. But so I got to have Trubisky. And then as far as filling out the rest of the lineup, because to me, I think that, the quarterback and whoever your captain is, assuming your captain isn't the quarterback, you kind of have to match them up. After that, I kind of look for who do I think is, got the best chance to be most productive. In this case, I did spend for Adams. I think Devontae Adams is going to have a big game. I'm not so confident because they're facing the Bears that I made him my captain, but I did spend the money to get him in there. And then I kind of had to save some money at that point, after spending money on him. So the value guide that I put in here, and it's kind of going to be hit or miss. I'm either going to be a genius or he's going to bust for me, but I do have Jimmy Graham in there. So it's too early in the season here for Jimmy Graham to be officially hurt. So kind of get him in there while maybe he can do something for you. And then again, I said I think the Bears are going to end up passing more than running. So I got a couple of receivers in there too to go with Trubisky. So I got Miller and Gabriel in there. More excited about Miller than about Gabriel. They're about the same price. And then that left me with enough money where I went ahead and I got Allison, receiver from the Packers as well.
I love it. The squad that I'm rolling out, it's pretty similar to yours. I've got Allen Robinson in the captain slot. I've also got Devontae Adams locked in. I think he's a guarantee for 15 points. He'll be owned by over 80% of the players in the contest, but that's something I'm perfectly okay with. He's someone I agree that you need to have in your lineup. I've also got Tariq Cohen in there, as well as Mitch Trubisky.
Joe, those names all sound familiar, Bert.
Yes, they certainly do. So I think that combination there, I completely agree with you that I think the Bears are going to be throwing the ball. I'll put my captain in Robinson, who I think can have a touchdown, pairing with Trubisky and Tariq Cohen. With Devontae Adams, did not have much salary for my final two players, so I had to get a little creative. With the amount of scoring I got the Bears doing, maybe it's only a touchdown or two. I think if Allen Robinson scores the only touchdown of the game, maybe Mason Crosby hits a couple field goals. So I've got Mason Crosby in there for $3,200. And to top it off, Cordarrelle Patterson for $1,000.
Okay.
Might as well go for it there. And if he catches one pass for 20, 30 yards, he can get to that value spot, and maybe he runs something back or he catches a deep bomb, and it's Bert in the money there. So I'm definitely looking forward to the Thursday Night Showdown, first one of the year. They do this every Thursday night and Monday night. They do it for the Sunday night games as well, for all the people who are trying to get the action. Maybe they don't want to bet a game. Maybe they just want to get a new way to have something at stake for the tournament. These one-game showdowns are a lot of fun. They keep you in the game from start to finish. I think it's great for football.
I'll tell you what, Bert, I just got an idea that is nothing that we've talked about. And I want to run it past you here real quick. What do you think?
Run it.
Okay, here's what we need to do. Every week, Thursday Night Football, Captain Showdown, my lineup versus your lineup. Winner next week gets bragging rights.
Love it.
We'll do that every week.
I absolutely love that. I think it's a great suggestion. And we can even enter it in like the $1 tournament too. See how we stack up. Maybe like a big tournament. You know, like I like to do the $10 entry on DraftKings. That's my only gambling of the night. It's a ton of contests, so it's typically a loser, but there's so much variance in a one game one where the wins, they kind of even out.
Okay, we'll pick a contest and maybe we'll put a poll up on Twitter and see, you know, each week whose lineup they like better.
Love that. Love that idea. Moving on to the big time aspect, week 1, 2019 DFS, something that drafters have been waiting all summer for. It's time to finally get that full slate of games, crack open your beers on a Sunday, kick back with your friends, go to your bar, go to the tailgates, and it's football time. And you're going to want to have a little action on it. So now we're going to take a look at the Sunday slate, the big shebang, and we're going to go through position by position, see some guys who we like and guys who we see entering our teams and our lineups. As you mentioned, me personally, I draw up 1, 2, 3 lineups max. I'll do a lineup for tournaments, and I'll do a lineup for head-to-head matchups or 50-50. We're going to go ahead and look at the certain quarterbacks who we think are automatic in our lineups. Dave, you got someone out there in Carolina who you think's ready to break out starting week 1.
Yeah, so not honestly the biggest Cam Newton fan, but for me, you know, DFS it's about winning money, you know. So I have no problem throwing my money down with having Cam Newton be the quarterback I have the biggest shares of. Not a huge fan of the Rams defense. I know that he doesn't have a lot of guys to throw to. He'll probably, you know, obviously be dumping it off to McCaffrey a lot, which, spoiler alert, McCaffrey is also a guy that I'm going to have, you know, a lot of ownership in, because if I'm starting Newton, I got to start, you know, somebody. So to go with him, and that's going to be McCaffrey as well.
So how come there's no love for little DJ Moore or Curtis Samuel in that squad?
Well, a few different reasons. I mean, if there was a receiver that I really liked on Carolina and I wasn't such a fan of McCaffrey, then yeah, I probably would, you know, just for the simple aspect of, you know, having to match guys up, you know, I would have them. But there are quite a few wide receivers that I actually really like in week 1. So, you know, all decisions in DFS usually come down to more than one factor. So in this case, it's a lot of, you know, there's 3 guys that I really like, and I've got in a lot of lineups. So that's a bigger factor than the fact of, you know, that I'm not such a fan of, you know, the Carolina receivers.
Gotcha. On my end, I've got 2 quarterbacks who I'm really eyeing down in juicy home matchups. The first one is Russell Wilson. He's got the putrid defense of Cincinnati coming to his house. He's been overlooked all summer, making goofy posts to Jadeveon Clowney. I think Russell Wilson comes back and scorches the earth on Sunday against Cincinnati in a sweet lock-in home spot, who we talked about pairing, and one of my wide receivers should probably be pretty obvious to guess. My other quarterback is going to be Carson Wentz, another person who's coming off injury, fully healthy. They've been keeping him under wraps in the preseason, but I think Carson Wentz gets unleashed at home against Washington. The offensive line, straight off of a interesting body issue photo shoot, one of the best offensive lines in the league. While Washington has a very underrated pass rush and defense, I think Carson goes nuts and hits Deshaun Jackson for a bomb in the opener, and Deshaun's return to Philly. I think Carson paces with at least 3 touchdowns. Any thoughts on those quarterbacks here? Tell me I'm crazy for loving Carson Wentz as an Eagles fan.
No, I like Carson Wentz. You know, playing against Washington especially. As far as Wilson is concerned, I'm a big Russell Wilson fan. However, because of the matchup against Cincinnati, my ownership, my big ownership for a Seahawk is actually going to be Chris Carson. So I think, that's a game that I look at Seattle probably winning handily. When I look at games that I think are going to be not super competitive, I usually lean more towards the running back because I think they're going to get a heavy workload. So I, agree with you about the, Seahawk versus Bengal matchup, but I'm taking the Carson aspect of it as opposed to the Wilson side of it.
What are your thoughts on Rashad Penny as a pivot play? I know Chris Carson will probably have some heavy ownership.
I kind of hate Rashard Penny right now. I'm a little bitter because last year I wouldn't say rode him, but I definitely had him in lineups more often than I should because I was waiting for him to break out. I really thought that he was a really good or would be a really good, DFS, fantasy player. And he just never really got himself going. So until Rashad Penny now shows me that he deserves my trust, I'll be happy to roll with Chris Carson in matchups like the Bengals.
Very nice. And I want to point out there's different levels of plays to the listener if maybe you're new to DFS and you want to try and start getting involved. Somebody like Rashad Penny would not be somebody you want to play in a 50-50 given the uncertainty of the role or a head-to-head. He's someone you would want to look at maybe in a tournament. If we're doing $1 entry just for fun with 100,000 people in the contest, you're going to want to try and get a little weird with it. So it's always good to look at things from a tournament standpoint and what you're entering into that contest and weighing the risk reward. Say if Chris Carson breaks his foot in the first quarter of the game and you have Rashad Penny at 0% ownership, things might be looking well. Obviously, the likelihood of that is a lot less than the likelihood of that not happening.
Right. And maybe to clear things up real quick, whenever, at least on my end, whenever I'm speaking, pretty much I'm talking tournament play, unless specifically noted, that it's a head-to-head or 50-50. That just, I think it's just more people do the tournaments and whatnot. And I definitely have a share of both, but just in general, when I'm talking tournament, unless, I specifically say otherwise.
Absolutely. And I agree. I typically am as well. And we'll bring up players who we think are good for 50-50s specifically. Like, don't get me wrong. I think Carson's going to be a very nice play in tournaments. I think he'll be very highly owned as well.
Right.
Speaking of highly owned, who are some other running backs who they might be highly owned, but you love the matchup and you love the play so much, you're going to play him anyway? Who are your other top running back plays of the week?
Well, I've already talked about Christian McCaffrey. He's expensive. He's third highest expensive running back on the board. But, I absolutely, for DFS purposes, love a guy, running back, that not only gets quality carries, but also is a threat out of the backfield to catch the ball. And if that's not Christian McCaffrey, and I don't know who is. The other guy that I've got a lot of this week is actually I've got Dalvin Cook. So Dalvin Cook is, just by skimming real quick, he's about the 10th most expensive running back on the board. He comes in at $6,000 on DraftKings. He's got a nice home matchup against a juicy Atlanta defense. I don't trust Kirk Cousins throwing the ball, even though he's got two really good receivers. I think there's going to be a lot of running in that game. And, Dalvin Cook doesn't have a whole ton of competition for carries. I feel that he's fully healthy now. So I really see him as getting a lot of carries against a really, what should be a poor defense.
I have not made one lineup that does not include Dalvin Cook.
See, there you go. Smart guys think alike, man.
I absolutely love it. I don't know if I'd call me smart, but I'm all in on Dalvin for the year, and especially week 1 when he's coming in healthy. It is a smash spot. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. He's going to catch the ball. He's going to run the ball. the offense revolves around him. When he's healthy, he puts up numbers. So he's got the high floor, highest ceiling you look for as a running back one at an absurdly low price. I think he'll be pretty popular, but I do not care. We're all in on the Dalvin Cook train. So let's go ahead and move over to some wide receivers. So I want to go ahead and do wide receiver a little differently here. I want to get 2 wide receivers who are your top picks, your top plays. I want to get 2 wide receivers that you are fading.
Mm-hmm.
So guys that you are not touching. There's too many different options, regardless of not or ownership, just strictly on the play. And then I want to get 1 wide receiver who is your deep sleeper, somebody who could be on the final roster of the Millie winner.
Okay, so let's go good first. So kind of the guy that the 2 guys that I found myself owning a lot of. The first guy I think is my favorite wide receiver pick of the week, just because of I think the value he provides. And I don't know, a lot of people may not even be too familiar with this guy, but D.D. Westbrook, receiver from the Jags, is the guy that I have in basically every lineup. So I do think that Jacksonville wants to run the ball, and they want to run the ball as much as they can with Fournette, and I don't blame them. However, I think that it's going to be a high-scoring game, and so I see them having to throw the ball maybe, more than, well, not maybe, throwing the ball more than they want to. So as much as I would like Fournette usually against that Kansas City defense, I think that Westbrook is the guy that is my number 1 for receiving. Number 2 is actually not that far behind, a close second. I really like Tyler Boyd this week. With AJ Green out, I think he's going to get a huge volume of targets. And in reality, I mean, what more can you ask for a receiver than, a huge volume of targets? I mean, even if he catches half of them, I mean, I'll take it, As far as fades this week, I hate to say it because I think he could have a big week, but I'm not going to touch Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is going against Jalen Ramsey. They've already come out and said that he's going to shadow Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill also is probably going to be pretty highly owned. I think a lot of people are going to go with Mahomes and Hill, not just this week, but all year long. So it's kind of a fade for 2 reasons, A, the Jalen Ramsey factor, and B, I think he's going to be too highly owned. And then another fade, and I think a lot of people might be in the same boat, is going to be T.Y. Hilton. Obviously, Andrew Luck just out of nowhere retired, and I think that drags Hilton's value down quite a bit. I don't think Jacoby Brissett is necessarily a world beater, so there may be weeks where I think T.Y. Hilton is a good play because I think he might not be highly owned. I don't think so in this particular week for me. And then as far as a guy receiver wise that I think could be on a lineup that could surprise you, I will actually go with Zay Jones. I was a huge fan of Zay Jones last year. He has his moments, but he's been more disappointing than anything. But I think Josh Allen is not that bad of a quarterback, and I think that they're going to have to throw the ball this week. And without having a legit number 1 receiver, or at least a clear-cut one right now, I would say Jones has as good of a chance as anybody, but I don't see him having a very high ownership this week. So if I had to save money and I had to do it at the wide receiver position, going for a home run, it's Zay Jones.
Very nice. So as you've been going to build your lineup, where have you seen the most value? Have you been typically taking a flyer on a receiver, or have you been taking a flyer on, say, a running back?
How about neither, Bert? The place I've saved money, at least this week, is TJ Hawkinson. And that is honestly probably 70% because I'm a Lions homer. And it's 70% because unless I'm looking this week at like Travis Kelce and spending $7,100 as opposed to $3,100 for Hawkinson, I don't know that there's another tight end that I just absolutely have to have this week. And I can't spend $7,100 on Kelce and still get the rest of my lineup filled out the way that I'm comfortable with. Hawkinson should play a decent amount for Detroit. You really, from a tight end, especially when you spend $3,100. If I get a touchdown or if I get 5 catches, I'm good. And Hawkinson is a good receiving tight end. I don't know, without seeing the Lions play yet, exactly what kind of run he's going to get early on. But for $3,100, saving that money, I think that the ceiling is there. So I'm going to take my shot with him this week.
Very nice. On my end, there are a couple receivers who I am big fans of this year. The first is Odell Beckham. I think Odell's got something to prove. He's got a competent quarterback for the first time in his career, and you've seen what he can do with an awful one in Eli Manning.
Right.
So I think Odell's going to come out. He likes to talk, but there's something about these receivers. They're wired a different way. They're going to go out there and ball. They're going to get their targets. They're going to make their plays because they're better. They're the best players for a reason. So I love Odell as my top wide receiver. He's the highest priced, but I'm still all in. And I have the money left over from my sleeper, which we're going to get to in a second. Another wide receiver I love. Next two are Tyler Lockett and Amari Cooper. Both wide receiver ones on their respective teams at a discounted price. I love Russell Wilson, so I'm going to pair him up with his top receiver and hope for 2 Tyler Lockett bombs. So I agree that the Seahawks will be getting the lead, and we can see a lot of Chris Carson, but maybe they score their first touchdowns with a Russ to Lockett, two touchdowns in the first half, and that would make me a very, very happy Bert. The next one there, kind of in contrast to your D.D. Westbrook, and I find this very interesting and one of the most intriguing pricings of the week. Marquise Lee has been non-existent this entire offseason. He's somebody I've had my eye on, however, as when he's played before his injury, he's a very good wide receiver. Nick Foles likes to chuck the ball deep. I personally like Marquise Lee more than D.D. Westbrook. The question is, how healthy is he, and is he going to be on the field for a lot of the snaps? I've seen reports out there that he is going to be their 4th wide receiver. He's going to be eased in. But I don't know. I don't know how good the rest of these wide receivers are. I'm a big D.D. Westbrook fan. On DraftKings at 4,800. They've got Marquise Lee at 4,400, which I was very disappointed in because he was someone I was looking to target in the first week as a streaming wide receiver, as a bit of a dart throw if I enter one of the mega tournaments. But he was priced only $400 less than D.D. Westbrook. What are your thoughts on Marquise Lee there, and why do you think he's so high up? Are they trying to tell us something?
Maybe. I mean, sometimes, they say Vegas knows more than everybody else, Now, this is a little bit different than that. But, yeah, he's a little bit higher than you would expect.
I was expecting minimum price.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, especially with the whole injury thing, and it's week 1, so you really don't know what you're going to get from him. I mean, I could see him playing 70% of the offensive snaps, and I could see him playing, 15%. It's tough to say. Now, again, at $4,400, if he catches you a touchdown, you're good. So even at $4,400, I don't think it's a bad play. I would rather spend a little bit extra money, obviously, and get Westbrook because I think he's a more sure thing. But would it shock me if Lee doubled the point production of Westbrook this week? It wouldn't shock me, no.
That's the fun of week 1, That's the fun of week 1. We know nothing. We know absolutely nothing, but we can agree that we're all in on Jacksonville airing it out this week. And I think that will be a fun one to look at. My second favorite sleeper is Brashad Perryman. Everyone's all in on the Bucks. Jameis is going to be highly owned. Chris Godwin is going to be unearthly highly owned. And Mike Evans will have his fair share of ownership as well. I'm going to pivot to Brashad Perryman. Jameis Winston missed him on 2 deep balls this summer, so he did not make any noise, no touchdown in the preseason. He was getting 5 targets, though. They've been keeping him under wraps. And my biggest thing with Perryman is he was signed to a 1-year, $4 million contract. I believe it's 4. It was either 3 or 4 million. It was a lot. It wasn't some veterans minimum contract to play with the Browns. But they mutually agreed to get out of that contract when they traded for Odell Beckham Jr. Perryman wants to play. He's a first-round bust. He could be someone finding himself on a team where he catches a couple deep balls. I think he's going to be good for maybe 3-4 games with a long touchdown. Why not take him week 1 where the price is minimal and talk about a tournament turner? If the Tampa Bay ownership is as high as I expect, Rashad Perriman at $3,300 could be on that final Millie winner. And I'd be very happy if that is so, because he is my highest drafted wide receiver on draft from this summer.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Bert, what you're saying is you like the combination this week of Perriman and Winston because they like to throw their balls deep.
I love the balls deep, Dave.
Gotcha. That's what I was just making sure we're on the same page.
Rashad Perriman could be the ball deep captain next week if he comes through with a touchdown here. And is that going to lead to a segment later on, the balls deep of the week? Yes.
It could be, yeah.
I think that would be a lovely idea. So we got your tight end. I'm just going to chime in real quick with mine. I've got 2 tight ends who I like. I like Zach Ertz. If I want to pay up, if I have salary left over, and if I go value elsewhere, I think Ertz is a lock for 15 points, as he had been basically all of last season. And I also like Eric Ebron.
Oh, boo.
I like it. Yes, I know you're not against him, which is why I wanted to bring him up. I like Eric Ebron this week. I think Jacoby Brissett will rely on Ebron as a safety valve. I think if they get into the red zone, he's their top target. And I think he can score a touchdown. I think he can come away with 5 catches for 70 yards and a score and provide great value on his pretty low price as a lower to middle tier tight end.
I tell you what, as a Lions fan, I am pretty much permanently against Eric Ebron. I think the only thing that could ever make me not have hatred for Eric Ebron again is if he magically somehow saves my kids from a house fire. I think anything short of that, I will never touch Eric Ebron in anything ever.
I get that. I completely understand that if I were you, I'd be in the same situation. It was not the best marriage between Ebron and the Lions.
No. And, even if my house was on fire and Ebron was carrying my kids out, I would be scared to death that he'd drop them.
Throw him down here. No.
So I hope Eric Ebron's listening to this, and I want him to know that he can kiss my white ass.
But I'm sure he's a lovely human being.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, if you see him on Twitter, he's an absolute fucking gentleman.
Seems like a gentleman. I wish him the best of luck, and I hope that he continues to perform, because I'm going to keep riding him, and I'm going to keep busting your deep balls when he makes plays.
No, without Andrew Luck, he ain't doing shit.
I will tell. There's a Brissett to Ebron preseason touchdown that gives me all I needed to see.
Ugh, gross.
All I needed to see. Well, we went through the list of players at each position, although we haven't touched base on defense. Just real quick, who do you like on D this week? There are a couple top options who I think are going to be the favorites.
So defense, I try to avoid the obvious just for ownership reasons. Usually defense is where I'll try to save a little bit of money unless there's just nobody. I actually got 2 defenses that I like this week. The one I like the most is the Jets. I really think that the Jets have a pretty good matchup against Buffalo. So I'm happy to start them a lot. Where I don't start them, just to mix things up. Again, I could be a complete moron homer over here, but I am always a fan of, defenses against rookie quarterbacks. So if I can get what I think is going to be the top half defense in the league against a rookie quarterback, in his first NFL start, I'll take my chances. So the Lions are actually my backup, if you will, defense.
That's a tried and true formula, quarterback against the rookie. And we're not even going to weed into the homer pick. I think there's a good excuse there because, again, that's something that's been working for the defense streams at all times. And I completely agree. I think those are great picks. And the Jets are one who I'm going to have to reconsider if I want to shed some salary. But right now, again, I love being the homer on with the defense. And I've been riding the Eagles defense for the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
They get sacks and they get interceptions. And they're facing a Washington lineup with an offensive line that is, to put it one way, bad.
Yeah, if money wasn't an option, Washington or Philadelphia would be my number one pick for defense for sure.
They are not a very – the Eagles have Fletcher Cox, who I think is the best defensive player in football. Yes, that includes Mr. Aaron Donald. Fletcher Cox is unbelievable, best player in the Eagles, and hope that he's healthy because if he is, they got Derek Barnett and Brandon Graham on the sides. Jim Schwartz defense, I think that they're going to be able to get their points. One concern there is ownership, and I think that it can actually be a low-scoring game, and that would not be good for Eagles D or any of, or a Carson Wentz play because Washington does have a good defense, and I see a scenario, again, you got to look at all the possible outcomes. I do see a scenario where it's kind of a slugfest. Carson's first game back, he could be a little rusty. So that's my only concern there. And even just speaking with you right now, I'm going to take a harder look, see if I can squeeze up in salary on my lineup and get us to where we need to go. So as we close out, I thought that it would be a fun formula here to go ahead, and I'm entering a contest on DraftKings right now, our future sponsors of the podcast. And I thought it would be fun to fill out a mutual lineup, one where we kind of go through our suggestions, our sleepers, and work together, and we submit a lineup that we think could have a shot at taking home a tournament.
Okay.
So how's that sound, Dave? And who are we looking at quarterback?
Well, let's see.
We're entering the $3 tournament that has 200,000 entries already.
Well, let's go. Let's go this way then. So this will get into a mind of how a lineup gets built, I guess. So I don't necessarily need to go from the top down. What I like to do kind of is start with who I think I'm in love with the most and work myself from there.
So we can pencil in Dalvin Cook right now.
There you go. Yep, Dalvin Cook. I was trying to remember who we both agreed on a lot. So Dalvin Cook's an easy one.
So I love the strategy, and again, I want to emphasize it. There's a million different ways to build your lineup. The one we're doing right now is also a good one. The way that I see it, I like to go from two different angles. I like to get my studs in there first, if there's someone who I just really, really love, or if there's a sleeper, I know, all right, this is my value guy. I'll plug him in,
right?
Maybe work around it.
Yeah, and then you see how much money you have to spend elsewhere.
And then you kind of take it and flow. Then you look at the rest of it, which is how we're going to right now.
So with that in mind, do you want to? Yeah, Dalvin, do you want to then go Hawkinson at tight end
for 6,000? I'd be down to ride the Hawkinson train.
Okay.
In the tight end spot. You're all in on him and give me something to root for
for $3,100. I'll take my chance and use that money elsewhere.
For the Lions. I'm scrolling down right now and looking at other tight ends in the area.
And they're probably a bunch of high school kids.
I think David Njoku could be an interesting tight end spot at 3,700.
Uh-huh.
I think he could be a benefactor if that Cleveland offense clicks. I think there could be a nice role for him there. Delaney Walker is too cheap at 3,500 on the other side of that game. So, yeah, I don't know, Dave. If we're going to go low, let's fill out the rest of our lineup there first and see what we're working with tight end.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of guys down there that could be available, and I'm not totally sold on Hawkinson.
That's fine.
Let's go ahead at receiver. Let's lock in a stud receiver. We know we're going to go value somewhere. who is a stud receiver that you're feeling right now? Do we want to go a Foles, Westbrook, Lee stack?
That
could be a fun one for a $3.
My head was actually thinking something similar to that. Yeah. So yeah, because when we started talking about quarterback, I was going to suggest Foles, and then I was going to say, but we'd have to put him with Westbrook and Lee if we're going to do it. So let's go.
It kind of hits on two of the players that we both like.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Marquise Lee is going to have zero ownership. So I think this could be a fun one to root for in what should be a high-scoring game.
Yep.
And that eliminates us playing Fournette.
Yeah, that's okay.
Which is perfectly fine.
So I do have a wide receiver name to throw at you. This one might surprise you. We haven't mentioned him yet, but he's actually a guy that I liked this week for receiver. So you tell me what you think on Alshon Jeffrey.
Oh, I see that you like Alshon, and you know what?
Mm-hmm.
The Eagles are going to be a very difficult team to figure out all season long. They're an equal opportunity offense. I think Carson Wentz is headed for an MVP year. So he's going to get his, and Ertz will get his just because he's the dynamic part of that offense. Carson loves him, and he's a terrific route runner and pass catcher. I don't hate Alshon this week. You know he's going to get shadowed by Josh Norman, but I think Alshon can win those matchups. I'm not the biggest Josh Norman fan. He's another year older. I'd have to go back and look at the specific stats Alshon has against Norman. I would like to have known that ahead of time, but we're getting there. I'm not completely sure how he does against Norman because, when I'm watching the Eagles game, we're like, it's all fantasy, all of that stuff goes aside when I'm watching my birds. I don't know. I don't know about Alshon here. We've got one receiver spot left, though, and we currently sit at 29,500 left, an average remaining player of 5,900.
Okay, so we got money to spend. So you want to go plug in our defense then and get because that's usually a cheaper option, and then we can kind of see where we can spend our big time money at because we still got some big time money.
You read my mind there, so it'll be good to see what we got left for our skill players. And I like fitting a defense in there.
So we really got two options then.
I like your Jets.
Yep.
And I love the Lions one could be sneaky because I think Arizona, a lot of people will be on Kyler. I think a lot of people will be on that other side. So by going Detroit defense, they're cheap, and I think they could be lowly owned.
Let's see. What's the price difference here? They are – they're
$2,900.
Okay, so $200 difference. But, okay, yeah, if you want to go Lions, I mean, either way, Lions, Jets, I'm good both ways. So if you got a good feeling about the Lions, it makes me feel like less of a homer, and it saves us $200 bucks. So what the hell?
Well, I wouldn't say this is – so there's sometimes I make my decisions where, especially on something like a defense and the type of tournament that we're doing with 200,000 entries, it's just like, hey, what the hell, The reason I'm talking myself into Detroit is because I think that Kyler Murray will have a high ownership. I think people will want to take him there with the new offense, see what Arizona's got. If that falters, Detroit defense picking up that slack, I think there's a all right chance of that happening. He is a rookie. It is a college coach's first game in the NFL. Again, as an Eagles fan, I went through the Chip Kelly era, and it was super exciting. And I played him in daily all the time, and they did score a lot of points, but sometimes they didn't. And sometimes the defense really got the best of him. And he is a rookie quarterback. Who knows? But let's plug in the Lions defense here. We'll see how much salary we have left if we want to spend up, but just to kind of fill that slot. So now we're looking at $6,650 with 4 positions to play. If we go low on tight end, we can really get 3 studs. And looking at it right now, there's only 2 tight ends. No, there's 1 tight end, Kelsey, who we're not going to play, who's above our average remaining player.
Mm-hmm.
Evan Engram, people are hyping up a big role. Ertz, and now we're at the point too where we know we're going to have 4 guys, 4 money to play with, since we don't really need a sleeper, since Lee and Westbrook are our deep guys. Who do you think we go next year? Do you think we go for a stud wide receiver? I know I love Odell. What do you think about slotting him in as our top guy and really spending up on what could be the top wide receiver play of the week?
I'd kind of like to see. It's so hard whenever I can't see the lineup that you're going with. I kind of wouldn't mind seeing what happens if we slide Beckham and McCaffrey in there.
I'm going to plug in Beckham. I'm going to plug in McCaffrey. And we're looking at 4,850 on 2 spots, and we can still go low on tight end and have another play. I like this. You're all in on McCaffrey, and it's my top wide receiver. They're obviously both studs and some of the best players in football. Let's let it ride. Let's not think too much into it. Let's go with our tight end here and then fill in the flex for whatever comes left. I think it's fine to go up and use – we can leave some salary on the board, but we don't have to worry too much about differentiating because it's just, hey, something's going to happen or it's not. There's 200,000 entries.
Mm-hmm.
Hunter Henry is really cheap. I think he'll be very highly owned. He's only 3,900 on the week, which is wild. If we go somebody like Ertz, so here's a fun exercise I like to do. I like to plug in a higher price tight end and then a lower price tight end.
Yep,
just to see what flex players will be available.
Mm-hmm.
So if we plug in a tight end like Zach Ertz, it'll give us flex options of Hill, Beasley, Singletary. We're not going to play Jordan Reed.
How much is left in cap space?
3,600.
Oh,
3,600.
Boy, that's tough. Okay.
So I think we're better off going cheaper at tight end.
Yeah, even my Zay Jones is 3,700, so we can't even do him. Singletary is interesting. I would rather own TJ Yeldon this week than Singletary though, but it wouldn't be crazy to go Ertz and Singletary. But
I like Yeldon. I don't want to touch Singletary this week against the Jets' run defense, and I think he'll be higher owned than he should. And it's more so about avoiding the grenades. I think the grenade possibility is more likely than not with him. So I think we're going to be able to get a good flex player and a good tight end at a cheap cost. If you like a tight end to consider with a Cam McCaffrey lineup is Greg Olsen at 3,200.
Mm-hmm.
But since we're going all out here, I think we're better off getting something from a different game. Again, 2,200 entries, maybe get a guy who people aren't talking about. Njoku, they see that red 7 in the opposing rank. They'll stay away. What are your thoughts on David Njoku this week? Oh, never mind. We got Odell, and we're not stacking it.
Yeah, see, that's where I still always went back to Hawkinson. I mean, again, as a Lions fan, I don't know the outside perspective on where he'll be owned. I'm going to assume a rookie tight end is going to be fairly low owned. And then we could see what kind of flex option that gives us.
I'm all in on that and seeing what's available here. So the top flex options with our salary, to get us to 0, it's T.Y. Hilton and George Kittle. We're not playing Hilton.
So what's the dollar value? So we got 6,600.
Yeah,
I like Robert Woods.
Someone like Hilton. Woods or Cooks available. They're in that McCaffrey game, so it kind of gives
you could actually double up and you could go Ertz as well.
You could go Ertz.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would rather have Woods and see Woods or Ertz. You could flip a coin on that one.
You can also go Fournette if that Jacksonville game really goes bonkers. Who knows? What if they put up 50 points? They'll all get theirs.
Oh man, yeah, you could. It's yeah. See, that's where again,
I don't hate that, Dave.
It's tough. I wouldn't go with Fournette, Foles, and 2 receivers.
Understandable.
You would literally, I mean, to win that contest, you'd have to get 2 rushing touchdowns from Fournette. You'd have to get 4 touchdowns from Foles. And those 4 would have to go to our 2 receivers. That would just be too tough, I think.
I agree. You know what? You talked me out of it.
I think that's too much. I think that's too much.
What about a Rams receiver?
I have always picked Woods over Cooks in lineups this week.
Why is that? Is there any cornerback matchups that favor the Woods matchup?
I just think that Cooks is a little bit more of a home run threat. Woods is a little bit more consistent. And so I've just kind of shied a little more towards the consistent side. Now, with that being said, if this lineup is literally made with the intention of balls deep, we're either going to win it or, we're going to look like idiots, then Cooks is, to me, the better pick. Because Cooks has a better chance of putting up 40 points than Woods does, but Woods has a better chance of putting up, 15 or 20 than Cooks does.
I didn't even have to say a word. I put in Cooks before you went on that. I feel exactly the same.
Yep.
This is a lineup that's just going for 200,000 people.
Yep.
Cooks has the monster upside, and let's roll with them. So we're looking at a lineup here of Nick Foles, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, 2 stud running backs, Odell Beckham, Marquise Lee, Dede Westbrook as our wide receivers, TJ Hawkinson at tight end, Brandon Cooks as our flex, $100 left over. Dave, I'm kind of loving it.
I'm good with it.
I think this will be fun. So definitely going to get this one entered. And we'll see next week how we did. I think it'll be a fun exercise putting a lineup together for just a ridiculous tournament and seeing if 2 average Joes, average Bert and Daves can go nuts one of these weeks.
All right, I like it.
All right, well, we're going to wrap things up here. Hope you enjoyed the first week of Fantasy Six Packs DFS podcast. I'm your host, Bert. Co-host Dave. Dave, it was a pleasure, and look forward to getting this thing going. And I think we're gonna have a lot of fun doing this.
For sure, Bert.
Take it easy.
All right, bud.